All right, guys, we got the finale today. Third video of the gas versus diesel comparison of day-to-day livability, fuel economy, and now we're gonna come to some conclusions and some takeaways. So let's just get to this. So in the first video, we captured what is the day-to-day drivability of a gas versus a diesel heavy-duty truck. So if you're someone that is like myself, that you're using a truck recreationally, maybe a little bit professionally, but you also need it for day-to-day, what do you go with? Do you go with, in this case, looking at Ford trucks, do you go with a 6.873 Godzilla gas engine, or do you go with a Powerstroke diesel? First video we did drivability, highway experience, fuel economy, shifting, comparing the 7.3 versus a high output Powerstroke. And we had some great fuel economy numbers to kind of compare the two. And the second video, we actually had a friend's truck that we did a towing comparison with a 7.3 trimmer with the 430 gears and a 2024 Super Duty versus my Cummins. So, and I kind of wanted to target this with the Cummins because I've done a lot of videos with the high output trimmer towing. So I've got lots of videos on that to compare fuel economy, performance. But the Cummins is the one I really wanted to target because you see a lot of people that believe this is the best diesel out there. I won't say it is or not. I've owned them all. I see pros and cons. I'm not sold this is the best diesel. Some people believe it is. Regardless, you see a lot of people say after owning a Cummins, they wouldn't own a Powerstroke, they wouldn't own a Duramax. They go to a Ford because they want the Ford truck, but they don't want the Powerstroke and they want a 7.3 gas. So we were able to take a small trailer, 7,500 pound setup, travel trailer, do a second video and comparing towing with this versus an F-250 trimmer. And to me, I was impressed by the 7.3. I thought the truck did incredible. If I was in the market right now looking for a heavy duty truck and I had to make a decision, do I go 7.3 or Powerstroke? Before doing the series, I would have always said Powerstroke, hands down. My tune has changed and I feel like I've been a little bit educated, and I think the 7.3 is a much stronger contender just because of how well its highway mannerisms and low end torque is. Very impressed with it. So then you got to ask yourself, what do you go with? Man, if you live in the mountains and you're towing up big grades, you need a huge engine braking, or you're a professional hot shotter, clearly the diesel is going to be your best option. I don't even think you have to argue that. But if you live in the Midwest, rural communities, 55 to 70 mile an hour driving, nothing crazy, lots of flats. Like where I live, gas starts looking more attractive, especially in the wintertime. You don't have to worry about gelling up of fuels. That's not as much of an issue today as it was in the past, but it is still something to concern of. Or plugging in glow plugs, don't have to worry about this. This motor warms up pretty quickly. Then I wanted to add another part to this. So I did a full comparison of gas versus diesel, and I compared 12,000 miles of usage for both trucks. I used the data from this test for fuel economy on the standard drive loop and fuel economy on the mile per gallon loop. And with that data, I comprised basically what would you want to look at for costs. What I tried to capture for costs in this were fuel economy, regular driving, highway. Then what I wanted to compare was fuel economy towing. Both those numbers are represented from my test results during the same 2 days. Then what I did was I actually called Bob Maxey's service bay. I talked to the guys and I said, if I need to come in to do an oil change, how much is an oil change for a 7.3? How much is it for a Powerstroke? I inserted that information in. Then I put in the information for how much DEF cost me in my high output diesel and my Cummins. I put that information in. And I tried to capture most of the variables you'd see in 12,000 miles of ownership, DEF consumption, oil changes, fuel cost. What's interesting is look at the time dates of when I first did this calculation 4 years ago and look where fuel prices are at. That's a whole conversation in itself. But look how much your total cost in a year went up in fuel use over the last 4 years. You can see things have went up. But when we start looking in your cost per mile, you see what's great about this, and this is why it's important to share, is if you're looking at this decision of do you go standard output, high output, or the Godzilla, and you're really trying to get into the nitty gritty of what is your actual cost per mile, look at these 3 different case scenarios of different fuel prices and how much it impacts your yearly spend on these trucks. And what's wild is, as these fuel prices change in these 3 scenarios, you can tell that once these 3 scenarios change, that the business case changes also. A lot of people believe diesel will save you a lot of money in fuel. And when you look at the mile per gallon, when we did the video, we got 18.3 or 18.8 miles per gallon. I'll put a link below of video 1 and video 2. 18.3, 18.8, whatever the number was in the Powerstroke diesel. And we got 13.3 miles per gallon in the gasoline engine. But once we start adding all these costs up, you noticed the cost per mile gets very similar. Now, here's where variables come in, and this is why it's important to include caveats. A lot of people believe, and I would be one of them, that says once you get 10,000 miles in these diesels, they seem to get better fuel economy. I would actually believe that, and I agree with it because I saw it with my 2023 Super Duty. With that being said, what happens when this motor breaks in? What happens when the 7.3 breaks in? Does it get better fuel economy? I don't know. I've never owned a heavy duty diesel or heavy duty gas engine to know, does that engine fuel economy improve? I don't know the answer to that. So I didn't include those variables. I also didn't include variables like at 100,000 miles, you need to change spark plugs in that. Also, at 100,000 miles, you might need to put a battery in it, but you have to put 2 batteries potentially in that, double the cost. I didn't include all that stuff. I just looked at 12,000 miles of routine basic maintenance and then said, look at these costs, because I think it's important when you're making a purchase this expensive. These aren't $20,000 vehicles. These are $70,000 to $110,000 vehicles. Run the math, do your analysis, look at your fuel economy and do your loop yourself, drive them. Look at what you're gonna be towing, where you live, what's your fuel economy. But the numbers were shockingly close. Then the next thing you could say is, well, let's talk about resale down the road. Typically diesel trucks are gonna get better resale, and I think that's true. But this engine right here is a $12,000 upgrade over the gas engine option. My question is, do you get all that $12,000 back when you go to sell it? I think sometimes you do, and I think sometimes you don't. So if you do that into your calculus, if you don't get the full $12,000 back when you originally purchased that high output diesel, when you go to sell this truck later on down the road, if we strictly focusing on ROI, return on investment or cash spent, this would be a better move. So if I spent $12,500 more for this up front, and I go to sell these 2 trucks at the same time, and I only get $9,500 back more for that, this would have saved you money long term, because the savings in fuel over 12,000 miles, if you're where I live, you're talking hundreds of dollars per year, not thousands of dollars. So you could potentially need, let's just say you saved $300 a year in diesel fuel to go with one of these. Okay, that means to pay for the $300 a year to pay for that $12,000 premium. What is that, it'd take you 40 years to pay back? Well, that's never gonna happen. It's not gonna come back into savings for fuel unless you're driving 50, 60,000 miles per year, and there's very unique use case scenarios. Once Ford put the 7.3 liter engine in the Super Duty with the 10-speed trans, the game changed for heavy duty gas powertrains. They're much, much more competitive on performance and fuel economy than it used to be. The old engines did not have nowhere near the capability of these current ones. You can tow about anything you need in the Midwest under 15,000 pounds with something like this. You don't need a diesel. It's just a really awesome, nice to have. I hope you found this video series helpful. I've got all the links down below. If you do, feel free to like it. Also, if you really like my videos, feel free to subscribe and turn on those notifications. I'm gonna continue looking and researching different powertrains. If you like the video and you wanna see me do more towing comparisons, I'd be happy to do that. I'd be curious to see what the Cummins versus the 6.4 Hemi does towing wise. I think you're gonna see a much bigger gap because the 7.3 is so amazing when it comes to being big displacement power. But I hope you found this series helpful. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.